Jana Brogan, you have an interesting story. I want to hear all about your efforts and your challenges in trying to build a green.
So when we decided to sell our home and build, one of the major reason was so that we could live closer to the land and reduce our footprint. So we decided to build in Redbridge, and we didn't want to have a general contractor, and we started looking at homes that we could buy, maybe prefab, that had a good green footprint. We would have loved to have been net zero or as close as we could afford to be. And as I was doing research and contacting companies, always at the back of my mind was the belief that there would be some grants or incentives for someone building a home to green standards. And, you know, as I was working and contacting different companies, I would spend a few hours here and there looking up the grants or asking, you know, the various companies like the window people, is there a green rebate or incentive? They'd say, well, you have to look with the federal and the provincial government. There should be programs. And so, again, whenever I could, I would, you know, spend a few hours looking and go down various holes and search out trails. And by the end of the summer, I was quite frustrated because I hadn't stumbled across anything. There were a few leads that just ended up taking me back to the beginning again. So I decided to call Vic Fideli's office and Anthony Rota's office, to email them to see if they could help me. And so I sent off an email to both offices, and they responded quickly and thanked me for asking them and said that they would look into it for me. And within a week, they both responded and told me that there were 0 grants available or incentives for an individual homeowner, either at the provincial or the federal level, but that there were plenty available for builders and developers. And so that was very shocking to me because it truly never occurred to me that this wouldn't be available to an individual wanting to build in a forward-thinking fashion. And started thinking about it, and it just didn't seem right that I couldn't access the same incentives that a builder could, and I also couldn't access the same incentives that someone who owned an older home could, because there are many programs and grants and incentives available to retrofit older homes to bring them up to a green standard. And in my way of thinking, it seems that if we're continually retrofitting, you know, that we should be focusing as well on building greener, and there's probably a very large number of people like myself and my family who can't necessarily afford or don't want to spend the money to buy a home that is already green certified because it's very, very expensive. So we would be able to achieve a greener footprint if we did it ourselves, you know, so I would like to be able to access those same incentives.
Is there a significant amount of savings by doing all that work that a general contractor would for building a home?
Yeah, incredibly. And it also certainly allows us to have a more personal approach to building. And we're learning a lot, and it allows us to sort of plan out what how we visualize living in our home. You know, it's not as cookie cutter as, you know, if I just went and ordered a full home with all the green certifications. We are doing a prefab home, but it's through a company in Ontario that tries to have a lower footprint and more affordable, but that is just the actual building. You know, then we were hoping to, we've had the roof reinforced for solar, thinking that we would be able to have some rebates that would make it well worth our while, and then we found out that we can't. So we'll probably still move forward, but it won't all happen at once. So it will be more of a process, building the home that we want over, you know, a longer period of time, which is a little disappointing, but we're still committed.
So the programs are just available to established builders and developers?
Yeah, or to people who own homes already that are not to a green standard. But when I think it through, you know, it doesn't make sense that I would invest all of these resources in building a home that is not to a green standard, and then, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 years, whatever, down the road, I would say, hey, I want to retrofit it so I can get all the grants, and just waste all of those resources that I've already put into the home. And we know that when we build, it is the best time to utilize these technologies because they're more sound than if you're trying to retrofit an older home that was not designed like your roof has to be able to, there's a certain load for solar and
engineered
snow,
for that,
right? So it makes sense to have the roof, prepared that way before you put the solar on instead of trying to retrofit. Yeah, it's just we don't know everything because we're just learning as we go, of course, never having done this before, but it just doesn't seem like the way things are being done makes the most sense for people like me.
Right.
I fall into a bit of a crack, our family does. But we can't be the only ones. Like, there must be other people who would like to be able to do this.
Well, that's the thing. I wonder if there's anybody else out there that's stymied by the same sort of situation.
And so we're going to try and utilize other, we've been trying to think creatively and think, well, if we can't do this immediately, we'll do what we can. But how else can we reduce our footprint? Because that's very important to me. So we're looking at things like, okay, how can we use, secondhand things in our home? How can we use, which we did when we were getting ready to sell our home. We were really conscious about how we were staging and what we were buying. But, so I'm looking up gently used kitchens when people are tearing out their kitchens.
Yeah.
That would make me feel better because I'm not just going out and having something made brand new that is taking up all kinds of resources when I know there are going to be kitchen cabinets going to the dump. So how can we reuse fixtures and faucets in a way that, it makes sense to us still, but that keeps things from going into the landfill?
Well, you're talking about some type of economy-destroying concepts here because everything's built on taxing for new purchase.
Well,
right?
I was I was an artist. I was a studio potter and a silversmith, and several years ago I decided that, as much as I love my own jewelry, if I never made another piece of jewelry in my lifetime, there would be too many pieces of jewelry in this world, and things are being thrown out. And the same with pots, and that's nothing against artists. Obviously, I support them wholeheartedly, but for my own conscience, if I never threw another dish or pot or teapot, there would still be too many that had no home. So I couldn't live with just sort of further perpetuating this consumer, where we never get enough, this consume.
Well, it is a conundrum that we're in this situation. I know most of my advertisers make their living at building new and designing new, and
that's awesome. That needs to happen because not everyone is going to want to. But not everyone can afford that, and if I had to choose, I don't want to have to choose between a house I can afford and one that is good for the planet. And I don't, I think it's unfortunate that people have to make choices like that. It's like, do I buy Mr. Noodles for my kids or do I buy them organic produce when I have X number of dollars in my pocket? People shouldn't have to make those choices, I don't think,
Well, there should be availability of other options in all cases, like your overall concept and of how to live with less of a footprint on is commendable and definitely leans towards logic, right? When we're looking at resource-strained Earth.
And when I'm the voice of reason, we're in big trouble. Really.
Well, it's a tough situation we got ourselves in. We got this consumer economy that finances this whole infrastructure of governance and public service, right? But it's ever-consuming, right? Yeah. There's no end to it, especially if everything needs to have exponential growth every year, right? The economy has to grow, the money has to grow, the revenue has to grow, because it's all built. Everybody's living off of this. Yeah, some living a little bit better than others, right?
It's a big machine.
Yeah, it's a big machine, and I'd like to take the top and sort of take a little bit back away from them, because I think they're hogging it. But everybody in the middle is in this machine where we are consuming and trying to live, right?
Yeah.
Even my magazine is not the most environmentally friendly thing in the world, right? But it's a concept and a comfort sort of food for people, and it's.
But if we're only offered two bad choices, you have to make a bad choice.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying that there are answers for everything, but we at least have to acknowledge that we need to find better answers. You know, I don't expect anything to just like flip overnight, because that would be chaos. But we need to acknowledge what we're doing isn't working, and how can we move forward in a way that serves, you know, the system, but also starts to serve the earth.
Yeah. Well, just in your own situation here, this is there's not a whole lot of people in that situation, but there's probably some others. You're a functioning person in society here. You pay your taxes, and those taxes go towards a place where the governance is providing an incentive for this section of people, but not the people like yourself who are also contributing, right? So you're just asking for that little gap to be filled, and a little bit of an incentive that's supported with tax dollars to do what you feel is best. Right. So you're represented, but you're not getting your representation. Right. So any luck with your elected officials? Anybody
I haven't
helping
heard from anyone yet. So I had hoped to hear back from Vic Fideli when I was working with his office, and I hadn't heard anything back. I tried to email Anthony Rhoda, but I can't find a public email address where I can email him directly. I did write to Peter.
I have one for his assistant. He'll get it to him.
Okay, I would like that. And then I did write, just very recently, I just sent off a little email to Peter Chirico, and I just to find out what, you know, on a municipal level, because I spend money here. I make choices here to support, you know, the farmers market, to try and buy locally, even though the cost is often greater. You know, just to wonder where the city stands on this, and, you know, what kind of forward thinking there might be within the city. Not necessarily about my particular situation, obviously, but just moving forward, how can we be cognizant? We have some great programs like Clean, Green, Beautiful North Bay, where the community is engaging, and there's certainly more and more focus on the need to green. So how is the city going to be supporting this also? So I'm interested to hear what Mayor Chirico says back. Well,
might ask you who you like. I might cut this out. You're moving out of his constituency catchment, so you're not going to be voting for municipal politics
I will
here.
still be shopping in North Bay and spending my dollars.
Same with me.
Here.
I live outside North Bay.
And I will still. My mom lives in North Bay.
Yeah.
I take care of my mother. She pays lots of city taxes and has for many, many years, you know. So I'm still part of this community. I have, you know, I will be working in the community, and I will be, again, spending my money here.
Yeah, and each of the elected officials, if they don't help you directly, they should help you in some way where, you know, they can point you the right direction.
City Hall was
somebody to talk to.
Yes, City Hall was great, because I'm building an unorganized township. I had questions, and I couldn't find an answer within the unorganized township, because, you know, it is unorganized. And City Hall was fantastic at answering my questions. They were really supportive. They gave me all kinds of you know, leads and liaisons to speak to, so they've served me very well, even though I wasn't building within North Bay.
Well, maybe when North Bay annexes Redbridge,
Well, now let's not get carried away with ourselves here.
Let's not get too organized.
Wait till my build is done. Thank you very much.
Well,
and that would be better for me.
Well, it's an interesting issue you have, and I don't see why there would be any. Maybe we'll find out why they don't make that available to individuals and just to developers and builders.
It just seems so counterintuitive that they will, you know, support retrofitting green.
But not necessarily independent building green.
Because I think it would be actually more cost effective to incentivize building green for individuals than retrofitting their homes. Because again, old homes are what they are, you know. So I just think forward thinking, it would be, you know, over the long term, it would be not to stop
I think
retrofitting,
a little bit both.
But I'm not saying to stop retrofitting, but let's not be retrofitting forever. And if there's a large percentage of the population who's never going to be able to access green builds, then you will be retrofitting forever, unless you make it affordable for you know, a certain demographic. Which would be me, my demographic, sort of middle class people.
Yeah, middle class people want to try to build on their own. I wonder if there's a builder that's going to help me understand why it's better to go with them than try to do it independently. And maybe at the end of your process, you can analyze whether or not it was worth your while.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that one of the reasons is if we were like actually building ourselves, doing the brick and mortar, that would be a disaster for people without the experience. And we wouldn't, we wouldn't know the materials. But what we are actually doing is acting as a general contractor. Yeah. To make sure that we know what is happening and having, being active participants within it. So I think that's different than just like when I say we're building a house, we're not actually building it. We're working with different contractors. Yeah, you're working with
you mentioned that it's going to be pre-built, right?
Yeah, it is going to be pre-built, the outside.
And those are engineered. And
we have to deal with civil engineer. But here's the thing, so we're dealing with a civil engineer from Southern Ontario, not from North Bay. There's money that's going, because this company that we're working with out of Southern Ontario for our prefab, these are the engineers they use. So this money isn't going into the community, but it could be if there were, some options that were closer to home for us, that were affordable,
right.
Yeah. There's we looked at some great prefabs out of Quebec, but they're waiting, that were affordable, but their waiting list was so long that it's not it's not feasible. Right. So it's trying to piece together, affordable and something that is within a reasonable timeline for building. I'm curious,
how much do you think you're going to save by doing it yourself?
Oh my goodness, we can do it. As opposed to if we were having somebody else do it, we wouldn't be able to do it.
Oh, okay.
You're right. So that is the difference, that we can afford to do it. Now, will we be able to afford all of the green technologies that we wanted? No. Will we be net zero? No. Which is what we would really have liked to have been. We would have liked to have, included, gray water exchange and geothermal and solar and be really, really self-sustaining and with very little footprint.
Right.
Now we will do, whether we get solar now or 2 years from now, our build will support solar. Right? If it means that we just are able to put in the groundwork for geothermal now, while the build it's still smarter than trying to go in and do it after. So we might just set the foundation to incorporate these greener technologies once we can afford to move forward with them. We would like to do it all at once. And for some people, they would just say, well, forget it then. We're just going to go ahead with the traditional, but my passion and commitment is clearly to doing this, and that's why we are building. So it would make zero sense for me to say, well, I give up. So I'm not giving up. I'm just kind of going to have to take a scenic route.
Well, you're on the frontier of this concept, right? So you'll do the learning.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'm sure everybody will be interested in seeing how it works out.
Yeah. It really is a lot to consider when we think about, and there's so much information out there that you could make it a full-time job or just a life, a vocation to just try and keep on top of it and learn it all. It's like food. You almost need a full-time job just to read every label. And the food that's available to us to make sure that what we're being told is in fact the way it is, all the greenwashing that happens. So it takes a great deal of energy to wade through it and figure out, well, does this really mean what they say it means? Yeah. Do
you share your learning experiences in the public format? Or
I think I will.
A blog of some sort?
I think I'm going to,
I know a website would love to have you write stuff like that.
Okay, great. Well, I would. I love writing. I think we've cleared... So our land is cleared, and we have all of our permits in place. And so then once the snow leaves, which is sometimes a little later in Redbridge, we will start moving forward with the actual tangibles. We've just been paying money and dreaming right now. So I think that once I start to see things happen, I'll be really writing down a lot and recording a lot. And just hopefully other people can maybe learn from some of the things that we've experienced. I
encourage you to do a bit of a blog and or YouTube channel of some sort of every little aspect of it going forward.
Yeah.
So people in this region can see somebody trying to do something like this.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Even like building in an unorganized township, it's trying to find out what permits do I actually need. And that took me probably a few weeks of just phone calls in different offices, and say, oh, that's not our office. We're going to direct you to this office, and then trying to figure out, because you don't want to start a build and realize after the fact that you don't have all of the permits, but there's not a governing board or office within the community to tell me this, and this. But you know what? Community forums are great. There are a lot of people. There's some good Facebook groups in Redbridge, people who have built and they were more than willing to share their experiences, which was really very helpful, and I was quite thankful for that. Yeah, so that was helpful just to get me started on that, because it can seem really overwhelming. It can be quite daunting when you've called, 6 offices and each one says, where are you building? Where is that? And I don't think we're the people that you want to talk to. I was like, well, can you tell me who I do want to talk to then? So yeah, it's been interesting.
Well, there's some good people out in Redbridge.
There really are.
And I'm sure they'll be glad to have you as a neighbor.
Yeah, well, I grew up out there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I grew up in Redbridge. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I spent a lot, my mom's house is actually just before the general store, so we were technically in North Bay, but we owned property in Redbridge.
Oh, okay.
And I went to Brownies and learned to skate and did all of the things in Redbridge.
So you're really heading home there.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, the property that I'm building on, my mom bought it. My mom and dad bought it, 40 some odd years ago. So, but it's a place we go to regularly, so it is very much like coming home.
What were their names?
My parents?
Yeah.
Well, it was Jana Brogan. She was an Armstrong from North Bay, and my dad is Robert Brogan. He's from Scotland. And he came to Canada in the 60s and married my mom, and they moved to North Bay. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a nurse.
Oh, the Brogan police officer.
Yeah,
I've heard of him.
Yeah, good things, right? When people used to say that to me, they'd say, I know your dad. I'd say, how?
Yeah.
Before we have any further dialogue. How do you know my dad? I'm just curious whether I should talk or run.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you the best of luck there. It's I don't see the wheels of governance changing in enough time to help you out.
No.
But it does raise the question, and maybe there is a gap that needs filling, right? It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Right.
In my opinion, definitely, as we watch the world around us and hear and see some of the effects that, that humans have made on this planet. Hopefully we can learn from some of those past actions. And I know it's really hard to prioritize the future over the now. I understand that, and people are just trying to do their best and live, and I understand that also. But at some point we have to, start thinking about, the next generations, because what is our legacy going to be if we don't make these changes and these choices? I have 4 daughters, and I don't want to leave them with a legacy of, despair. And I think youth already are feeling the weight of that.
Well, the whole concept of a disposable society is ever-reaching, far-reaching, and because that's what we have as an economy, consumerism like that. I just was having dialogue on Facebook. I have taken up snowshoeing, and I'm using snowshoes that have been in my family forever. Mm-hmm. Some of them are like at least 70 years old, and they're the old wooden sinew. And it's like, as long as and people are like, oh, get the new ones, they're so much better. And I've tried, I buy secondhand, so I bought a secondhand pair of, aluminum snowshoes, like not the most expensive, so to be fair, they're just kind of average snowshoes, but I really don't enjoy using them as much as and that could be just psychological too, because when I'm snowshoeing with the old snowshoes, I think of, where did these snowshoes travel before, and, there's legacy there, and there's continuity and lineage, and it's like, you can't be, and it's funny because I'm vegan, but some people were saying, why would you use, something that is animal guts? I said, well, it's not really going to serve me to throw them out and buy new ones. Like, what's going to serve, the world better? I saw that Facebook post.
Right. I was just kind of floored by that.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
See the photo of the old trapper from Kippawa.
Oh, nice.
And his snowshoes in the background.
Yeah, I love them. I love the old snowshoes, and in my family, we buy like our car is secondhand, our dishes are secondhand, 90% of our clothing is secondhand, wherever we can, you know, in a reasonable way.
So do I, but not by choice.
Oh, well, well, I mean, is it choice? Is it choice, or is it just we change the world?
I'm content at where I'm at.
Well, yeah, but so, we facilitate change, unfortunately, by how we spend our money in this world.
Right.
And I'm really careful about who I'm giving my money to. You know, even, you know, and you might want to cut this too, but even like Value Village these days is just,
they're capitalizing on the poor.
I can't even with clear conscience shop there anymore. Like, it's really, really sad, you know. But yeah, how we spend our money counts. Like, I now, even at the grocery store, because I so desperately want to eradicate plastic, so I will pay more money for carrots that don't come in plastic than in the big bag of carrots that comes in plastic. Because to me, that's not a choice. That is survival. That is, you know, being good to the earth. And when I was in school, I did my thesis paper, my capstone paper, was based on the premise that we share a microbiome with the earth. Our microbiome and the earth, we share a common, you know, bacteria, and that what's good for the earth is good for me, and what's good for me is good for the earth. And you know, I went through just the physiology of how that works and so on and so forth. But essentially, if I am buying things that are bad for the earth, they're essentially going to be bad for me in my ecosystem, and vice versa. And plastic, we know, is. And it will eventually, like, if it's not harming me in the moment that I'm eating the carrots, which it might be, but it might not be, it will hurt me.
Well, just
long term.
The whole plasticization of the world. Every time I see people buying plastic toys for the kids and outdoors, and I know they only last a year or two, and they're thrown in the garbage. I've done it myself, and it just kind of, and I know it's a cast off from the chemical of our oil industry, and then it's like, again, right?
I know.
But I really like this one post I saw. I can't remember who did it, but this guy, he has one of those reusable grocery bags, and he's pulling out of it, and everything he pulled out of it's in a plastic bag.
I know. So I try really hard now, and my kids are like, oh, I'm like, I'm not buying that plastic. Nope, sorry. If I forget my produce bags, oh, no, we're not getting apples because I don't want that plastic. It annoys the heck out of me. So for me, you know, and it costs more money, which is crazy, to buy it without the plastic, because like you think they have to make the plastic, but it's like, it's not a choice. It's a non-negotiable. There are lots of things in my life that are negotiable, but when it comes to health and wellness for my family and the planet, if I can do it, I do it.
Yeah.
You know, but again, sometimes society hasn't caught up with that. Like, we don't have always good options, and you can't make a good choice if you only have two bad options. So then you have to kind of allow grace for everyone involved until we catch up. So this discussion we're having about building, it's like that.
Right.
You know, it's not that anyone's at fault. It's like we need to catch up.
Right.
So we have to allow grace for that, but also say, okay, let's have the dialogue. How are we going to fill in this gap? How are we going to make the next step? Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so.
Electric cars and stuff?
Well, I'm so torn because of the, like, so it's like, so as an artist, I'll go back to that as my descriptor. Here's my little example. You know, I was making often the jewelry pieces and the clay pieces I was making were really had messages about how to be kinder to the earth, and yet I felt, and this does not stand for anyone else, but in my own experience with my conscience, I was actually like raping the earth to make this statement, be kind to the earth.
Hypocritical.
So, yeah.
To you.
Yeah, to me. And for my own journey. So electric cars are a little bit like that. It's like, it sounds good when you're telling me about it, but if you look at the battery and if you look at the reality of it, it doesn't look so good. So ride your bicycle when you can. Walk when you can, and you can't always. But if you do what you can when you can do it, it all adds up. If 100 people decided to ride their bike 2 hours a week instead of driving, think of the difference that would make. You know, and then you multiply that. That's like 100 people. It's not very many. If everyone makes one little step towards middle, we will have progress. It doesn't have to be everything or nothing. You know, I'm a little more extreme. I want it all, but it doesn't have to be. If we all just take one action and choose one action, we're going to change this action for a year. You know, if everybody did that, think of what we could accomplish.
Well, I want to do a video of you biking in from Redbridge in January.
I'd be more likely to snowshoe.
Well, actually, we would organize our lives so that we would plan around it, and I already don't come into town every day.
Yeah. Like I would do, much like I do now. Like I do my mom's shopping and my shopping and the appointments on the same day as my kids have swimming and, you know, piano, and then not. You know, and there's Redbridge is awesome. They're looking at doing a community garden this year, and so I'm going to get involved with that hopefully.
Cool.
And
there's a lot of good stuff going on. I think that's the thing. Everybody needs to just push as hard as they can, the best that they can, towards something that's a little bit better than what we've done before, and then there's an exponential 100%.
Right? That's all it takes. Like the first
maybe
step,
an electric bus coming from Madwa to pick me up and drop me off in North Bay.
Do you know when I was little, when I was a kid, and when I was little. We had a city bus in Redbridge. We did. I used to put my cross-country skis on there when I was 7 to take the bus to Trussler for my cross-country ski team because I was bused to town. You know, and we used to be able to take the bus home after our swim lessons at the Y, but there hasn't been a bus for years. Yeah, same for Highway 17. I don't know whether it would be well used or not. I certainly would try it, and I would pay towards that. Well, it's kind of like the train, right? It will work if you set it up to work. If you choose hours when people actually need to travel and when they need to access, but to have the service offered at obscure times or to be cost prohibitive, then you're setting it up for failure. You have to, you know, set it up for success, I think, and that will work. Yeah, so when I'm elected to run the world. Yeah, well, let me know when the campaign starts. I'll sell you an ad for my magazine. Excellent. Well, thank you. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for speaking with me today. It was fun talking. Yeah, it always is. Yeah, thank you.